Are we good? We're good? We're good. I'm going to lift you guys up a little bit. Scary stories. This should be fun. Love reading them. I mentioned that a lot. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to read more scary stories. We're going to continue on reading some creepypastas. Yesterday I stopped at the No End House. That one was such a long story for them to just be like, oh yeah, he's like in an eternal hell. Eternal. Lasts forever. So, that was not that bad of a story. It was interesting, to say the least. But, the next one that comes on this list is Slenderman. I don't really know how that story goes, other than I know the fact he kidnaps children. Most of the time I fail to mention at the beginning of these live streams, if you don't do scary things, you don't like scary things, it's not the video for you. Usually people pop on, realize it's scary, and then they pop off. But it's in the title. It's scary stories. Reading scary stories. So, Can you just tap the tablet? I don't know where the other one is. But wherever it is, yeah. That's Elizabeth. Slenderman's a creepypasta about a strange paranormal creature that abducts children. We all know this. And if you don't know now, you know. Slenderman's often described as being an unusually tall man dressed in a black suit, wears a white shirt and a black tie, has long, thin arms, and his face is said to be completely blank. So he has no face, which is the easiest way they could have explained that. So, according to the legend of Slenderman, Slenderman can stretch or shorten his arms at will. He has tentacle-like appendages protruding from his back. His presence can cause memory loss, insomnia, paranoia, nosebleeds, coughing fits. So lovely. Whenever the Slenderman appears, children are abducted. They say he lures them into the woods and he controls their mind and forces them to walk into his outreached arms, where they're never seen again. They had a movie a couple years ago based off Slenderman and that idea. One wasn't the best movie, but it was okay. Sounds super weird. Love reading creepypastas, but that's just one creepypasta that the movie was not good. I don't know if they've done a movie with any other creepypastas. That's something to look up. Okay. A series of woodcuts were found in Germany. What are woodcuts? Cuts of wood? Or like slide, not like those things you put in those weird projectors, the little clip pictures, little pictures. Those are the only things I can think of. Found in Germany, they date back to the 16th century. And anyone thinking any of this is real, they're scary stories. None of these are real. They don't actually exist. But people like to pretend they're so real as to try to make themselves a creepypasta. Other than that, these are just stories. They're not real. 16th century features a tall man with no face named, I'm not even going to try, it's in German. I can't speak German. According to the inscriptions, he is a mythical creature who lives in the Black Forest and creeps out of the woods at night to spirit away bad children. Oh, so it's bad children there. An old German journal dated to 1702 contained chilling account of this thing. Because my child is gone, taken from his bed. If he's possessing the kids and they see that their child's gone, can't they tell if their child's walking away or something's out of place? The kid's name is Lars, I think. Lars came running into their bedroom yesterday, screaming at the top of his lungs, "The tall man's outside." And when they asked him about the tall man, they said it was Slenderman. I'm going to say Slenderman, even though it's not what it says. It's in German. It says Der Grobenman. I can't. Reading scary stories. Door. Door. Okay. Do you still doing that? No, she wants you to see her Hamilton poster.
It's really small.
Hamilton. You know, it's really hard to point to things. So when I try to point, it looks like I'm pointing the opposite direction. In reality, I'm just trying to point at that one thing. Okay, still can't pronounce German anything. The child said he went into the groves by their village and found one of the cows dead. They found the carcass of the animal hanging from a tree. Pretty dark. They thought nothing of it at first, but now their Lars was gone, and they must find him and leave the place before they were killed. And they should have listened to the kid. That's really sad. But according to another account, was found in a book collected folklore concerning supernatural creatures. Their younger cousin came to live with them. He was older than them and their sisters, maybe 16 or 17. They were the only family he had left, and he was the worst liar you'd ever meet. Anything you'd tell him, or he'd tell you, was a lie. And it says they liked him all right. Okay. They slept in the loft during the summer because it was the coolest place up there. And in the winters, they slept on the floor closer to the stove. His sisters had their own room. Obviously, boys and girls usually tend to have different bedrooms. So one night, their cousin wakes him up by punching them in the shoulder. If my cousin were to wake me up by punching me in the shoulder, I'd slap them. Not even a second chance. That's my place. Punching him in the shoulder. It was summer, so they were up in the loft. And their first thought when he woke them up, is it just to push me out because they're not happy at being woke up, I'm assuming is what it meant. Before they could say anything, he puts their hand over their mouth and even though it's dark, they can hear he's scared. Listen, I mean, yeah, you could hear the tone of someone's voice if they're scared, if they're sad, angry. Your emotions come through in your voice. It happens. So I'm not totally denying that. They heard something like scratching on the roof because they were in the loft. It was a trifle rattled. Was a trifle rattled? That's what it says. I don't know what any of that means, but they weren't having any of it. So maybe it's a raccoon or a cat. No, the cousin had a reply, and the next day the cousin tried to tell the dad about it, the uncle. But the father wasn't having it. But one night while they were all having supper, the father sent out the youngest to fetch some water from the pump they had in the back. After that, they heard the girl scream, and their mom got up first, and their father and the rest stayed at the table because they was like to get in. They They didn't want to get in trouble. If Lily is the name of the girl, if she was hurt, they didn't want to get hurt as well. Makes sense, but if my sibling, if I hear them scream, I'm going to go, whether anyone likes it or not. Siblings, you do that. You love your siblings. Then the father points out and says there's a man walking, and he keeps shouting that. So when the sun was setting, it was hard to see, but when they looked over at the field at the back of the house, the whole thing lit up orange, and there was a row of black trees at the edge of the woods. And they swear they saw one of the trees moving, like a man walking away. But it couldn't have been a man because there was no man that tall and skinny. The father saw it too, and he took them all inside, locked all the doors to make sure to keep still, and he got out his rifle. A rifle is a gun, for anyone who doesn't know. They got a new house closer to the mill where their father worked. They still couldn't manage the thought of that tree moving back and forth like a man walking. The following, it was considered a Slenderman. So they gave up about the child. I mean, when Slenderman takes them, he takes them wherever, and you never see them again. That's the story. But, they just gave up and they moved. Even so. The movie they did for Slenderman. You gotta give me a second. They watched this video. There was a ritual to awaken Slenderman, and whoever did it, because it was 5 girls, I think. 5 girls, and they only wanted to do it because the boys were doing it, and then the boys chickened out, and the girls actually did it. So Slenderman was trying to pick them out one by one. I want to spoil the ending for anyone who hasn't seen Slenderman. They all die, except for the younger sister of Haley. Haley was the main protagonist. She dies. She gets turned into a tree. Well, sucked into the tree more like. But, and her sister lives. Her sister was on the verge of dying, and if she didn't let Slenderman take her, her sister was going to die. So, she let Slenderman take her. That's just how that went. I'm not saying that movie was bad. It was okay. But even May agrees it wasn't the best movie. And she loves anything that has to do with creepypastas. I'm trying to find ones I haven't read before because I get really annoyed when I reread stories I've already read. And I reread the same story over again. Yeah, that's the proper sentence. Okay. There's a couple. I don't know if I think I've talked about this one. I don't know if I've read it. I think I read it for a top 10. I might not have posted. I might have. It's top 10 creepypastas or something like that. This one's called Abandoned by Disney. Ooh, no, not reading that. I read that. I've read that one. I'm going to read you the synopsis or description, whatever you want to call it, of the story. It's the description that you find at it's on the back side of books. Like that. I'll throw that book over there. Oh no, I needed that. That's fine. Abandoned by Disney is a scary creepypasta written by Slime Beast. I think that's the original name, and that's what they have written here. It's based on a real island at Walt Disney in Bay Lake, Florida. It was opened in 1970 under the name Treasure Island. It was open to guests. It was later renamed Discovery Island, and in 1999, the attraction was closed down and effectively abandoned. However, Disney still owns the land, and it's illegal to trespass onto the property. So how this story goes is, I think someone goes in and they find this space, and there's this one door that leads to employees only, and it's a bunch of animatronics and puppets. And a couple weird things happen. But either way, it's more it runs to the weirder side, and it gets disturbing, and not like scary disturbing, like disgusting disturbing. So and because I think it's because they're Disney characters, it makes that all the more weirder, because you don't think of Disney as disgusting. But that story does take a turn on the gross, technically some adult topics. I say it like that because, it's just what it is. So yeah, no, I'm not reading that one. And then there's a couple more. There's Laughing Jack. I've heard about Laughing Jack. I don't know if I've read his story. I think we should be fine reading this. I think we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I don't know anything about this one. I could ask May, but I don't want to run downstairs. So we're going to read it. If it gets disturbing, probably skip over those parts. So Laughing Jack is a scary creepypasta about a mother who discovers that her young son has an imaginary friend who is a clown. Now, he doesn't look like a clown, per se, what everyone pictures, like Pennywise. He doesn't look like that. He has this super long nose, kind of like Pinocchio when he lies, and it's black and white. And he has the smile, and it goes to here. There's a description of what he looks like. I could show you, but I know some people watch over my videos, and I don't want people to get scared. So I'm not in the mood for frightening people. So it was a nice summer day, and their 5-year-old son, James, was playing outside in the backyard. He was a quiet boy and would often play by himself mostly. He never had many friends, but always had a wild imagination. They were in the kitchen feeding their dog, Fido. Is that like the go-to name when you're trying to think of a dog name? Is it Fido? That's cute. Okay. When they heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard, they wondered who he could be talking to. Could he have finally made a friend? But being a single mom for them was hard for them to keep an eye on their son. So they decided to go outside and check on him. James was alone in the backyard. He started talking to himself, and they could have sworn they heard another voice. And then the mom calls to him, tells him it's time to come inside. He came to the kitchen table, and she asked him who he was talking to. He looks up for a moment. I was playing with my new friend. And she asked him what his friend's name was, and he goes, his name is Laughing Jack. Oh, that's strange. What does he look like? Oh, he's a clown. He has long hair, a big swirly cone nose, and he has 2 long arms and baggy pants. He has striped socks and always smiles. That's so freaking creepy. Then they realized their son was talking about an imaginary friend. They supposed it was normal for a kid his age, and it was normal for him to have imaginary friends, especially when he had no real kids to play with. It was dark, and they had an awful nightmare. I accidentally skipped over. Like, I went like this, and it glitched out like that, and then automatically it went to the next line. The rest of the day was uneventful, and it started to get late, so they put James to bed, tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and made sure to turn on the nightlight before they closed the door. They were pretty tired themselves, so they decided to go to bed after a while, and they had a terrible nightmare. And this is where I started the next sentence. It was dark. They were in some type of rundown amusement park, and they were scared, running through the endless field of empty tents, broken down rides, and abandoned game huts. The whole place had a horrible look to it. Everything was black and white. The prize stuffed animals all hung from ropes with sick grins stitched onto their faces. It felt like the whole park was looking at them, even though there wasn't anything living in sight. Then suddenly, they began to hear music, the sound of Pop Goes the Weasel playing, on a squeeze box. What is a squeeze box? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what a squeeze box is, but I don't want to leave this page. I'll figure it out later. It echoed through the park. It was hypnotizing. They felt like they were in a trance. They followed the tune to a circus tent, and they were unable to move. They were unable to stop their legs from moving. It was pitch black, and the only light that came out was from a single shining light on the center of the big top. As they walked through the light, towards the light, the music slowed down. They found themselves unable to stop singing to Pop Goes the Weasel. The music stopped right before the as the music began to hype up, it stopped. Suddenly, the lights shot on. There was a they were blinding, and all they could see was a small dark silhouette shuffling towards them. Another one appeared, and another and another. There were dozens of them coming towards them, and all they could do was they couldn't move anything. They were frozen, and all that they could do was watch the haunting figures draw near. As they got closer, she could see they were humans. They were children. She looked at each one, they noticed they were horribly disfigured and mutilated. Some had cuts all over their bodies. Others were severely burnt. Some of them were missing limbs and even eyes. And the children's enveloped her. How do you envelope someone? I can't even. One, I need to know what a squeeze box is. Squeeze box is a family of network music players, and the original device was the Slim P3, which was introduced in 2001. They wound up being discontinued in 2012. So it was basically an object that could play MP3 players. Now, enveloped. To wrap up, cover, or surround completely. Okay. So they were surrounding her. They enveloped her. See, that was a reference word that I didn't even know. It's good using synonyms. That's good. Okay. Child nightmares, yes. Oh, no, skip too far. Laughing Jack did something. Whoa. They started to scratch her. And they pulled her into the ground. As the children... I'm just going to say this, and I don't care if YouTube gets upset about it. As the children tore her apart, which is pretty gruesome, they faded away, and all they could hear was the laughter. Horrible, awful, evil laughter. They woke up the next morning. After a few deep breaths, they looked over and saw that a few of James' action figures were positioned facing her at the top of the nightstand. She thought James probably woke up early, put them there, and they figured to gather up the toys and make their way to James' room. However, when they opened the door, he was sound asleep. They just shrugged and put the toys back into the toy box and walked out to a living room. A little while later, James woke up and they made him breakfast. He was quiet and seemed a bit groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either, so they decided to ask about the toys. And she asked, "Hun, did you move your toys?" His eyes shot up for a moment, and then he glanced quickly back down at Sarah. "No, Laughing Jack did it." "Well, You tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room. He nodded and finished his breakfast and then decided to go play in the backyard. And then she went to relax in the living room and must have dozed off because it was a couple hours later. I get being a mom must be really stressful. My mom's a mom, and she gets stressed and tired a lot. But here's one thing she doesn't do. She doesn't sit down on the couch and doze off without someone else being there to take care of a kid. So like me and Can, if she dozes off, we'll watch Nessa and Seffi. You don't leave your child unattended, especially outside. How a kid gets stolen. And I say that because she was a bit worried when she needed to check on him. It had been over 2 hours and she hadn't seen him. She stepped into the backyard, but James wasn't there anymore. And she called for him. And just then she heard giggling from the front yard. She rushed through the gate around the front, and James was sitting on the sidewalk. Very bad. They breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to him. And she asked him, "How many times do I gotta tell you to stay in the backyard?" And then asked him what he was eating. James looked at her and then reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of hard candy. And she asked him who gave him the hard candy. And then she kept asking him. And then he said Laughing Jack gave it to him. And then she goes, "I've had enough of this Laughing Jack. He's not real. And this is a serious situation." And she needed to know who gave the candy. And he persisted. "It's Laughing Jack." Now this was irritating her. And James would never lie to her, or had never lied before anyway. But she knew what he was telling him was impossible. So she made him spit out the candy and throw the rest away, which is reasonable. Reasonable. You kids eating candy, you don't know where it came from. And then that night, they put James to bed as usual and decided to go to bed early. Suddenly, they woke up to a loud bang coming from the kitchen. That's creepy. They sprung out of bed and hurried down the stairs. When they got to the kitchen, they were horrified. Everything on the counters had been thrown on the floor. And there was their dog was on the floor too. Their dog was dead. And someone filled him with candy. They made him into a piñata. Not cool. And it was the same type that James had been eating earlier. And then they heard a scream come from James' room, and then that was followed by loud crashes. She grabbed a knife from the drawer and moved upstairs. Only a mother whose child is in danger could have been. That's the speed she was going at. She walked in and her son was crying on his bed. She scooped up her child and ran out of the house and went next door. Luckily, they were still awake. They let them use the phone. They called the police, and it didn't take them long to arrive. They explained what happened. They looked as if she was crazy. They searched the house, but all they found was the dog and 2 trashed rooms. The officers told them that someone may have gotten into the house and done this, making an escape when they heard them coming up the stairs. But they knew it wasn't true. So you tell this kid Laughing Jack doesn't exist, and then you're starting to believe he exists because your house is getting trashed. Does that make sense? My sisters, when you tell them their imaginary friends aren't really there, when you try to give them a cup and then they think they need like 3 or 4 cups for their imaginary friends, and they'll trash the house. Is that paranormal? Because that's what you're telling me. Is messes happening are paranormal. Okay. So anyway. And then she tries to convince herself it's not the imaginary friend. And you know. Oh my word. I skipped down too far. Okay, she sees Laughing Jack. He lets out a sickening laugh. And as if he was pleased with his work, He then turned around slowly in front of James and began to laugh. And then that was enough to shake them into terror, and she said, "Get away from him." She rushed the monster with the knife above his head and stabbed down at him, but as soon as the knife touched him, he disappeared. Oh no. She killed her son. You can't kill something that does not have a body. If you know you can't see this thing, there's a reason. Whether it be a ghost, a demon, you can't kill them. Okay. Then she realizes she killed her kid, and immediately she started crying. And then she said she promised she'd protect him, but she failed, which is super sad. Police arrived and still wielding the knife covered in her kid's blood. The trial was short. They were found guilty by reason of not guilty by reasons of insanity. Though it was an accident, she wasn't insane. She did it. Accident or not, she killed the child. She was placed in a mental hospital for the criminally insane, where she had been for 2 months. And it was not so bad. The only reason they're awake now is because someone's playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside the window.
Welcome back to Des Watches.
Hello, Dazzlers. Welcome back to Daz Games with another Daz Watches. She loves Daz. Like, I showed her one video, and then she just keeps watching them.
It's funny.
It is.
They have those other ones that aren't funny, and they bore me half to death. But
Oh my word, those people that react and they're all like, and the baby rattlesnakes died.
I did not say
Yes,
like
you
that.
did!
No, I did not. You're a liar.
Not like I do need a charger from Ken. I'll be right back. Okay.
Charger, are you done with it? 5 minute or so. I had to have a cherry cheesecake bar, which is not keto friendly, but it's carb friendly.
That's cosmic.
So I didn't technically cheat on the diet, but if I did not have something to eat,
They're talking about their keto diet they're on. So, Mom, stop saying that. There we go. Oh. Had to find a charger. I borrowed one from Meme. So, I think May has told me a little bit of Laughing Jack. She's all like it was a kid's imaginary friend. I think she did tell me the child dies, but I still hate reading stories like that. Even if I didn't know. So that's the creepypastas of the ones I will read. This one says shocking stories, and it's under scary stories. Yeah. Okay. Oh, these are true ghost stories. I clicked on the wrong one. You know what? The first one's Robert the Doll. Do any of you know who Robert the Doll is? Okay. So, it's more detailed than how I was going to explain it. Robert the Doll is a true ghost story about a haunted doll in a museum in Key West, Florida. The doll is real, and some say it is subject to evil curse. Many people claim to have seen it blinking or moving. Let's get rid of that. In 1897, a family named Otto lived in a house nearby in Key West, and they owned a plantation and had many servants working for them. They were treated very badly. One servant girl gave their son, Gene, a present as of a doll. When the Ottos didn't realize What they didn't realize was that the girl knew voodoo and black magic. Gene's full name was Robert Eugene Otto. His parents always called him Gene, so he decided to give the doll the name Robert. Many strange things began to occur in the Otto residence. Neighbors claimed to see Robert moving from the window to window when the family were out. Gene began to blame Robert for mishaps that would occur. The Ottos claimed to hear the doll giggle and swore they caught glimpses of the doll running through the house. My hiccups. It's fine. Gene began to have nightmares and would scream at night. When his parents entered the room, they'd find furniture turned upside down. The child was in a fright, and Robert was at the foot of the bed, and with his glaring gaze, he would always say, "Robert did it." The doll eventually was put in the attic where he resided for many years. But Robert had other plans. Visitors that entered the house could hear walking back and forth on the attic and strange giggling sounds. Guests no longer wanted to visit the Otto home. Gene Otto died in 1972, and the house was sold to a new family. The story of Robert the doll had died down, but Robert waited patiently in the attic to be discovered once again. A 10-year-old girl of the new owners was quick to find Robert in the attic. It was not long before Robert unleashed his displeasure for this child. The girl claimed the doll tortured her and made her life a living hell. Even after more than 30 years, she steadfastly claims that the doll was alive and wanted to kill her. Robert, still dressed in a white sailor suit and clutching his stuffed lion, lives quite comfortably though very well guarded, at the Key West Martello Museum. Employees at the museum say that Robert is still up to his old tricks to today. And Robert served as an inspiration for Chucky in the Child's Play movies. They did a movie based on Robert called Robert. Now, there was one for Annabelle. Annabelle was a real doll too. Now, I say Annabelle because they did Annabelle, even though Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll. They did a porcelain doll. Porcelain dolls are super freaking creepy. But they tried to do the same thing for Robert. I don't think they're made by the same person. They're two different people that made the movies, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Robert, that movie was terrible. It was not even scary. There were so many scenes in there where it was just silence, and I decided to make up funny stuff to put in there. And there was this one scene. Yes! I'm reading the story of Robert, Mom. You remember the movie? Yes! You know exactly what I'm talking about. Not. Mom. I know that movie sucked. I'm not watching it. I'm reading about the actual doll and was referencing the movie. That is true. She's in the bathroom. The movie was stupid. It wasn't scary, and where there were supposed to be jump scares, the jump scares were dumb. It was just.
Why don't you read something like that before bed?
I don't get scared!
I'm gonna have nightmares.
You're gonna have nightmares about how poorly done that movie was. Oh my word. You did that one time for one movie. What was it? Grave Dancers. That scared Mom so bad she went and slept in May's room with her. May was 10. That was like 5 years ago. Anyway. And she said the butt touching incident because Robert pushes one of the babysitters down the stairs and touches her butt, taps her, and she falls down the stairs. She lives. But the mother was like, "Did you push her?" And then she was so silent. I'm like, "Well, I need to talk to you about a butt touching incident." And then there's this other part. to tell, what does she say? She tells the boy to tell her what Robert said. And I go, I can't tell you. He swears. It's the funniest thing that
we know, Rabbit.
is me making up lines to put in there because the movie was so boring. Who the hell's Ravis? Whoever he is, if your name is Ravis, don't tell us what we already know. That's from Zootopia. It's actually, don't tell me what I already know, Travis. She's a weirdo. I gotta find that one. Robert was the only one I have it right on there.
Somewhere else.
What the hell, May?
Oh really? Oh really?
Oh, Scary Tales. I've read those. This one says real ghost stories. So what's the difference between true and real? I mean, it's the same thing. It's called Upstairs, Basement Room, Pendulum, The Train, Elevator Button.
That do Marlo back.
No. Well, that's trash. You're not watching that. Racist and disgusting.
She's talking about Super Mario Logan. Super Mario Logan does a bunch of Jeffy things. I don't agree with anyone watching him. For anyone who wants to know who Super Mario Logan is, most of his videos are racist.
Said that?
Yeah. I know, but Mom said don't ask for it again, and I was telling them about who Super Mario Logan is. He's rude. That's all that is to it. He's rude and he's disgusting. Oh, that's lovely. Now everyone knows. You knew anyway, because I told you. A peeping Lillian. Okay. We're good. I'm looking through the stories to figure out what one to read. What's called The Train? It's a short, scary real ghost story about a young boy who encounters something horrendous lurking in a little room off his bedroom. Have any of you seen R.L. Stein's Goosebumps, the TV series?
I'm going back to watch my Dez.
Get my earring out of your ear. I forced that out of your ear. She's not supposed to wear earrings because she has a allergy to metals. It's rare in some people, and she just has it. So when she puts metals in her ear swells. Or when she wears jewelry, wherever it is, it swells. So it's because of certain alloys that are in metals, certain ones. We've tried everything except gold, which is saying something. We've tried a lot of earrings. Oh, that and sterling steel. Other than that, yeah. Oh, anyway, R.L. Stein's Goosebumps, that one where it's a sponge under the sink. You know, do any of you know what I'm talking about? This girl hears a sound under the sink and everyone's like, oh, that's weird. She's like, it's an evil sponge. And everyone's like, oh, no, it's not. You're a freaking liar. And the dog dies. And then she tries to do an experiment to get rid of it. And it runs around the school. And it's under the sink. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Probably not. But that's the only way I can explain this story. And I don't want to read it because it's got weird. I like to skim through the stories before I read them. So I know what I'm reading. Okay, this one's called Upstairs. Oh, no, I clicked on elevator buttons. Let's read about wait, I've read this one before. They go to the 13th floor, even though there's only 12 floors. You know, the whole elevators, buttons, and then certain buttons don't work, but then they do. That's literally all that story is. I've read about stuff like that so many times. It actually comes to the point where it's annoying to read stories that have to do with elevators and then one floor works even though it's not supposed to. Upstairs. Upstairs is a short horror tale from Japan about a young boy who comes home and hears his mother's voice calling him from a bedroom on the second floor. I've read a story similar to this. This family buys a new house. And the boy doesn't quite know the layout, but he comes home. His mother and father are both supposed to be at work. And all of a sudden, he hears upstairs, hey, hon, come up here. And the boy follows the voice. And the mother comes home after he's almost opening that door. Goes up the second floor in the back room. Goes to open the door and hears his mother downstairs. Oh, hey, are you home? And then he runs down. He's like, you're not in the second room? And you never figure out what's in there. They're often alone in the house and their parents often were home late after they got home from school. One day they delayed their way back from school. It was early enough when they got home and the house was dark. They called for their mom and heard a faint voice say, yeah, coming from upstairs. And then they called to their mom again and heard the same, yeah, come from upstairs. So they climbed the stairs, and when they reached, they heard the yes come from the back bedroom. They felt a certain unease about the room and wanted to see their mother as soon as possible. So they hurried to the back room. They were about to open the door when suddenly they heard the front door open and heard a lot of grocery bags. Sweetie, I'm home. Are you home? And hearing that voice, he regained his confidence, ran down the stairs, and then happened to glance over his shoulder towards the back room. The door opened slightly. Oh! This one actually tells you what's behind the door. For a moment, they saw something in the gap of the door, the pale face of a man staring directly at them. That's a first. I've read the other one I just told you about, and they never tell you what's in the door. I've read that a bunch of times. This one they actually tell you. So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to do one more story. Nope. That one. I want to find one more story. Well, this one tells you how to write scary stories and to make your own, and they tell you how to do it. Those are poems, and if anyone's listened to me read a poem, you know I have no rhythm. At all. Okay. This one's called The Mask. The Mask is a creepy story about a group of boys who are cleaning an old warehouse when they come across something hidden in a wooden box. 3 teenage boys were looking for a summer job, and they were hired by a company and given the task of cleaning out an old warehouse. While they were working, one of the boys found an old red wooden box among the pile of rubbish. Never open boxes you find in rubbish. The teenagers gathered around the box, curious on what was inside. When they opened it, they were disappointed, and all they found inside was a clown mask. It was a grotesque mask, and narrow, beady eyes, and a red nose, and a large, crooked smile. One of the boys put the mask on. He immediately began to laugh and jump up and down. The other boys chuckled and displayed and clapped their hands. And they watched as he danced around the warehouse, flailing his arms around like a crazy person. His laughter echoed around the old stone walls of the warehouse. He danced faster and faster, and the two boys finally didn't find it funny anymore. The masked boy was twisting his body around into absurd shapes. His friends began to worry that there was something wrong with him. He kept falling over and banging his head against the ground, and whereupon he immediately sprung to his feet and resumed the crazy dancing. The boy clawed at the mask and laughed like a madman, and it looked like he was having some type of seizure. His friends ran over to help him, and they grabbed him, and he fell to the floor and stopped moving. They ripped off the mask, and when they saw his face, they were horrified. The boy's face was twisted into the expression of horrible pain. There was blood coming from his eyes, nose, and mouth with the mask had been sitting. They called an ambulance, and by the time they arrived, it was too late. The boy died. Oh, my word. Don't try on a weird mask if you have no idea where they've been. I just said, don't open random boxes you find in a pile of rubble. Usually that doesn't end well. And with that, I will probably read more scary stories tomorrow. I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye!